NAMIC Atlanta, we'd like to welcome you to our latest edition of Coffee Talk. I'm Charles Neal, your host for today. And today we have Careshia Moore, President and CEO over at Usher's New Look. Careshia, how's it going?
It's great. How are you, Charles?
All is well. Anytime we can say that we're on this side of the dirt is a great day for us. Now
It's
we're in
true, and I'm
November.
glad to be here talking with you today.
I'm glad to have you. I'm glad to have you. Now, Careshia, you got a lot going on. It's a lot to unpack with you. Let's start back. You're a lawyer by training, if I'm correct, right? So,
I am. Prior to that, I was an educator, but yes.
and you were an educator. And so help us get to going from educator, to lawyer, to now being the president and CEO of a nonprofit, Usher's New Look. I want to unpack the passion aspect of it, your leadership. So we're going to take it one step at a time. Tell me your journey, and then we'll go into, just different aspects of you as a person.
Absolutely. So for me, I have always been very passionate about youth and helping them. I even think back to a young child, mentoring, bringing people together, creating experiences, and that carried on to me as a college student as well. Really initially wanted to be a child psychologist and realized, look, I didn't want to go to school that long initially,
Not long,
right?
you're a
And
lawyer.
so exactly. You can rewind that and experience. It gives you a little more wisdom around these things. But ultimately, I chose the path of education. It still allowed me to support youth. And my first job was in Naples, Florida, which at the time was the richest city per capita. My school was in the middle of a Gulf community, very affluent community. But then when I got there, they said, hey, you're going to be at two schools, one in Naples and one in a town called Immokalee. Now, I grew up in Miami, Florida, which is an hour and a half to Immokalee, had never heard of it. Drove 20 minutes from Naples, completely different world, primarily migrant community, poverty like I had never seen it before. And I was literally going every other day from my school in Naples to the school in Immokalee. And the interesting thing about it, Charles, is that I was teaching gifted students. So all of my students were high IQ. No one could say it was ability, but what I instantly learned is that it was going to be access, opportunity, and exposure that really helped to elevate the youth that I served in Immokalee, to give them the opportunity that was really dictated by the gifts and talents that I got to see whenever I was teaching them. So I brought a lot of that into my classroom. How do we help expose them to different careers? Their parents were working in the seasonal crops. They were transient. They would come to school in October, leave in April. So they needed more than just reading, writing, and math. Early on, I said, okay, the system is broken. We need to bring about more equity in education. And that is what really propelled me to go to law school after a few years of teaching. I wanted to really work on behalf of equity in education. And so I went to law school. My focus was education. How do I learn these systems? How do I think about policy, legislation, the history, especially of the Black community when it comes to segregation and all of the laws that were on the books around us and keeping us from being educated. And so I really sort of dived head into that. Graduated in 2007, the recession hit. So what did I do? I got a job, right? And I was, litigating for a while. But ultimately, I knew that my passion and purpose was to help change the trajectory of the lives of youth. And so I resigned twice from my firm in a year. The first time they said, hey, come on back. You can have any schedule you want. I did that for a few months. And then I said, it's me, it's not you. There's something else for me to do. And the next week I was at an event for Usher's New Look through a series of introductions. And for me, that was everything that I needed. I saw an organization that was doing exactly what my young people needed, that I was teaching, say, 15 years earlier. Usher's New Look was about purpose and passion and exposing youth, providing them with access, opportunity, and exposure. Started volunteering 10 years ago, and what started out as a volunteer assignment turned into me being with the organization for 10 years, working through different aspects of programming, and ultimately about 4.5 years ago, becoming president and CEO.
Got you. We got to rewind a little. I need to understand better that push and pull of going to two totally separate. And Naples is like, yeah, right. So I will have to just take this one on the cheek and admit Reels every now and then gets me. You know, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
right? And so as I'm on it one day, I'm looking at it, may be Reels or one of the other ones, but it was going through, hey, this is the Atlanta UC, or hey, this is the LA UC, or and then this is the inverse of what it's like
Yes.
in reality. And you
Yeah.
did that. You were going from upper crust to, I'm not going to say bottom of the barrel, but bottom of the barrel, if in the way you sort of described it. Where how did that pull? I mean, obviously I see the end result of it, but during that time, what was that pull like? How did you make it through seeing ultra rich to, you know, great individuals nonetheless, but still struggling to make it?
Mm-hmm. I mean, look, growing up in a middle class, working class family, it was an education on both sides for me, right? I mean, my students in Naples, I'll never forget, they literally pulled out an encyclopedia to show me what a pontoon boat was, okay?
Mm,
But then I go and learn about the fact that my young students have to work in the fields with their parents on the weekends. We were doing service learning at the time, and one of the, my class at the time, they decided to do a mural at the school. We got permission. I got a mural artist to come donate her time and equipment and materials. We just had to do it on a Saturday. Sent out the permission slip. One of the young men who actually drew the sketch said, "Miss, I can't come on Saturdays. I work with my family." I had to call his mom and explain and say, hey, this is such a great opportunity for him. Still remember his name to this day. Can he come just for a little while? And they ultimately did. But it was that they were in a constant push and pull, right? Even that area, I tell people, there was so much philanthropy and support for that community, but it was all geared towards really the physical needs for those young people. And those were the most immediate, right? Clothing, shoes, food, healthcare, making sure that those needs were met. But what I was seeing is that this is for the right now, but for the long term, they're going to need so much more to set them apart. They need those experiences in schools. We worked so closely with community. I say we did school completely different. Conferences were not during the middle of the day. Why? Because parents were at school. I mean, at work, right? We did things at night. We made sure we were feeding our young students. We had programming after school, and teachers were writing grants for us to teach extracurricular things that they may not get experiences with outside of that school. So for me, it was a great education in, going from learning how to be a teacher to this very practical. It's not all cookie cutter. You have to look at the community that you're in and meet those needs. So that was really the push and pull for me. And then going, for example, to my school in Naples, where in my classroom, I was just there 3 days a week. I had 8 computers lined up in the back of my classroom. I go to Immokalee and we literally huddle around one computer at the computer cart to do a Yahoo search. I know I'm dating myself with that Yahoo search, but but so that was like the difference between the two, and kind of going back and forth with that. It just really was apparent to me that there are still inequities when you talk about resources in education, because they were all a part of the same school district.
Wow. I mean, look, when we met, I didn't know that part about you. That's a powerful story on its own that we could just keep on unpacking, but we're going to keep
Mhm.
on going on that.
Yeah.
I just when I'm hearing that, I'm like, wow, I don't understand how I would have been able to go through those polarities every single week and understand that when I go to one area, I have a surplus of, and I go to another
Mhm.
area, I am so constricted. It's just a big push and pull. So I'll leave it there for right now. We'll come back to that at another day because I really want to
Okay.
hear a little bit more about that. Um, just superpower I read one day was calm, right?
Hmm.
How does that superpower sort of coalesce into your leadership style?
Great question. Yeah, calm. I mean, I think I even told you before we started filming here, right?
Yeah.
And how I am where I am filming this. It is, you're faced with an issue or a problem and you tap into resources to solve it, right? Getting panicked, stressing out, doing the blame game is not going to help achieve the ultimate goal. And I think my leadership style is very similar. I like to empower my team to think through issues. I don't want to always have to be the voice in the room. I think it's giving them those development issues, those that visibility, the exposure that they need, so that they can develop into leaders as well. I tell everybody I've worked in a lot of different settings in between education and practicing law. But Usher's New Look, I've always, even in the 10 years, I've always had the opportunity to work with some of the most passionate people um, ever, ever. I mean, everyone that comes through these doors are passionate about the work that we do. Now, it's my job to say, let's take that passion and develop the skills that we need to have high performing staff members working with the young people that we serve. So, a lot of what I do is how do I help leading by example? We're faced with an issue. You're going to see me remain calm and steady, and let's think through how we solve that. If I'm not in the room, you are empowered to make a decision. And guess what? If it's different than what I would have chosen, that's fine. If it didn't work, let's talk about what we do differently. If it worked, I'm your biggest cheerleader, right? So it's a lot of modeling for me, and maybe that comes from my education as well. It's a lot of showing how to stay resourceful and ultimately continuing to be a lifelong learner and becoming an expert in this industry. I don't think just because we're a nonprofit, people think you just lead with your heart. Oh, where they're just pulled by their heartstrings and they just want to do the work. We're a business, right? A nonprofit is just a 501c3 is a tax designation. We're a business entity and we want to operate as such and have the highest level of team members, expertise within our team as well. And so that's what I convey to our team. And I think a lot of modeling of that is what I try to do as a leader.
So let's talk about that for a second, right? If we were going to grade individuals on your leadership and how you inspire your teams, you guys have had 50,000 or 50 plus thousand students come through the program.
Mm-hmm.
You have 100% graduation rate. We call that an A plus.
We'll take that.
Then you have 98% of them going off to college. Take that as an A plus, right? When you start to have the conversations about the impact that individuals are having in communities, you guys start, I think, what, seventh grade? You have what, three layers? Seventh, eighth grade. Mm-hmm. Well, talk to us about the 3 layers.
Right. So Usher's New Look is an organization that supports historically marginalized youth and helping them to develop into passion-driven leaders. And we do that through our comprehensive programming that focuses on spark identification, cultivation through education, career exploration, and service. And so our 4 pillars, talent, education, career, and service, are really what we put in the forefront of all of our programming. And like you just said, there's really sort of 3 layers to that program. We do a 1-day training that's called Powered by Service. And this is where our college or our post-secondary students actually go into middle schools and high schools and facilitate leadership training. So the young people in these schools, I call it an assembly on steroids. We may have 200 young people that start out at an auditorium and then they go into classrooms for smaller workshops. But in those workshops, they're learning about financial literacy, spark identification, leadership styles, networking, how to network, why is it important to network? And then how do you use your spark to bring about change in the world? We have an activity that we call Exploding the Issue, where they think about issues in their communities or in their schools and how they can use their spark to change those. So it really is a 1-day sort of survey course into Usher's New Look. We're headquartered in Atlanta, so we do those programs in Atlanta. We have a program in New York, so we do them in Brooklyn, but we also host that Powered by Service globally. We've done it everywhere from Dominican Republic, Shanghai, Kenya, to most recently Macon, Georgia, Salt Lake City, Utah. So that program is really like our signature youth training program. From there, students can go into our after-school high school program. So that's called the Leadership Academy. And students come once a week and they do a deep dive into our 4 pillars, 9th through 12th grade. And they're committed for that time, because what we believe is it's not just that 1 year, or we're not going to have one engagement with you, but the real change and the real support comes from that extended pipeline that we provide for students. Once they graduate high school, as you said, we have 100% high school graduation rate for those who go through our high school program. Thank you, which is huge. It's huge. Then we have our post-secondary program, which is our moguls in training. So those are our college age students. Most of them go to college, 4-year colleges or universities. Some choose 2-year colleges or technical schools, and some choose to go to military or right to work. Whatever it is, whatever their pathway, we support them in transitioning into adulthood. So that looks like teaching them those things that they may not necessarily get elsewhere. So it may be things like, how do you get car insurance? How do you purchase a home? Credit, budgeting, those sorts of things, to, time management, setting goals to help support them in their transition into adulthood. And then the last thing I'll say is all of that programming was built in conjunction with Emory's Business School. We've had demand, say, for example, in Bloomington, Illinois, that said, how do we get Usher's New Look here? We've created a club model where schools or organizations can say, hey, we would love to get access to your curriculum. We want to start a Disruptivator club here in our location. And we partner with those schools in order to be able to do that.
You just drop so much knowledge. It's like, where do you go back on touch points? But, that part of a conversation that we need to have in the future is that percentage that says college isn't for me. You sort of go into a debate about skills-based versus college education. And so we have solutions for that. There are organizations out there that I know I'm loosely affiliated with that I want to talk to you about in the future that says if they want to go down that path where they want to develop their skills and still be able to get a family sustaining wage, there's an organization out there that's led by a bunch of CEOs that would be a perfect intersection with what you're doing today at Usher's New Look, because it's additive on the platform and the foundation that you're already working on. So I just wrote a note on that to say, hey, make sure I the right individual.
Listen, and then that is huge, right? That for us as a 501c3, fundraising is important. But I always tell people, beyond the check, beyond the financial support, we need these kinds of connections so we can provide those resources to our young people. So yes, I will make a note to follow up with you on that too, Charles.
Now you brought up, hey, we have conversations with these individuals, these young adults, on current events. And we can't get any more current on the events than the affirmative action scenario that just played out. So now I know my daughter goes to Spelman, right? Her friends came over and we were having this, not even a debate, just really a conversation, just for awareness so that they could understand, the impact short term and longer term. Because my wife said something and I didn't really think through it until she said it. It's like we have this in front of us for 20, 30 years because it's made it to the Supreme Court. And you're not going to see a major shuffle happening for a long period of time. So I'm a student, I'm in your program. I'm like, hey, Miss Careshia, talk to me. What did this mean for me? What are you saying to him or her?
Right. I mean, the first thing that I thought about is there were several states, and I was in school, for example, in Florida, when there was an executive order, right, that did away with affirmative action or race-based admissions. And what I know, and I worked in admissions at that time, is that it still took innovation, creative intentionality around how do you make sure that these campuses are diverse, that our young people still have the opportunities that they need. Because even though it's not race-based, look, you still have legacy, you still have quote unquote merit, right? But we know that is not always the case. So my thought around this, Charles, is Yes, we continue to bring awareness around these issues. Yes, we partner with schools, and I'm also on the board for my alma mater. I'm the alumni board, and so we'll have conversations around this. How does it impact the enrollment at the school? And we'll continue to have these conversations and think tanks and all of this. But in the meantime, how do we prepare and support our young people? And I think that's where we have to double down and triple down on schools, parents, and community-based organizations pulling together and preparing our young people for post-secondary, however they choose, right? Making sure that they have the experiences that they need, making sure that the FAFSAs are completed. And I know there are a lot of initiatives around that. Donating free SAT prep for those who cannot afford it. It makes such a, and I didn't find this out until later, but there is a whole community of folks out there who don't just go to the bookstore and get a Princeton Review or a Kaplan book to study for the SAT, right? They're paying $250, $300 a pop to study. How do you compare, right? So how do we get those resources, those same resources, into the hands of our students who we know, if just given the opportunity and the resources, they could knock it out the water as well. So I think we have to um, solve the disparities that exist in resources around education, college preparation. Are they getting support around their college essays? I think about my son. The first week of June, he was back at school working on his college essay. Guess what? He's going into senior. His first draft of his essay is due August 1st, right?
Yeah.
There's this whole system that is there to create success or put them in the best situation for success. And we've got to do that for all students, regardless of zip code, regardless of where they are. And I know that there are so many disparities that exist, just harkening back to the story that I told you of how I started, right? So how do we get those resources into the hands of our students so that even regardless if they change it, I hear that they're talking about adversity scores and all of these other things. If you just look at their application, they are ready to go. Now we know that this decision sets us back, right? Affirmative action was there to help undo what has been on the law books since the 1800s. Okay. And we're still catching up. I mean, at my alma mater, I think Black folks are still 6% of the student population, right? And so we're not there yet. So it really is detrimental in that way. I think, like you said, it's going to be a while before we can change any of that or think about changing it legally. But what can we do as a village, as a community? It's rally around our young people. The business community has to invest in providing these communities and our youth the skills and the resources that they need that we know that they're not able to get right now as a result of just the disparity in resources in schools, right? What do they have access to all of these additional college counselors and SAT prep? We have to get it in their hands so that they can continue to be competitive.
That's leadership right there. All I was sitting there thinking about when you were talking just now was you didn't take the defeatist attitude.
Mm-hmm.
You came back with, bang, we do this, bang, we do this, bang, we could think about this, change our thought process, change leadership, leadership, leadership.
Thank
right?
you.
I'm going to pivot a little, and it's still going to need your leadership hat on this, because now they make it through all of that, and then they have to face automation and AI bots, etc. I have my own opinions on the way I hear institutions looking at it, because I think in a lot of cases institutions like, no, you can't do that, it's cheating and this, and I'm like, we live in a reality that these kids, these young adults are going to be utilizing this. If they're not utilizing it, they're going to be behind the bell curve.
Yeah.
And so I throw that back at you again. When you start looking at the technology arena and what's coming in front of us, in fact, what's here right now, are you guys, is Ushanu Look and yourself personally preparing them to integrate in and not say, oh, we got to have hands off because the universities and the schools said it's cheating, versus, no, we need to integrate and learn how to use these things, because the person who knows how to use it are the people who are going to have jobs in the future. And I'm leading the witness on this one, but is what it is.
So that's where you want me to go. No, I mean, the great thing is that I'm already there with you. Okay. This woman here uses Chat GPT. All right. You can't beat them. You got to join them. I taught my mother how to use Chat GPT. So, and that's just the basic of it, right? So I'm able to do a little search. I put in a search for my son's colleges, thinking about, okay, what are the top schools for this? Boom. It just makes life more efficient. I'm there. I'm not going to be the dinosaur as far as that concerned. As far as preparing our youth for this, it goes back to when coding and programming, and I was in this education space, and I remember hearing someone say, if we just teach our students to code, they will be equivalent to line workers in a factory.
Wow.
We have to teach them the management style, the decision making, all of the other things that create upward mobility, that create real financial change in their lives, and gives them the opportunity to lead and create in this technology space. And I approach it from that same perspective. So we're going to talk a little bit, I think, about our Disruptivator Summit. We have an excursion with IBM. They're going to be learning about all of the new innovations around AI. We have an excursion around technology. We are constantly teaching our youth on how to stay ahead, and giving them introduction into these new industries. I remember when we were talking about developing a program called Career Spark Academy, which is where we can help our youth go deeper into a particular spark that they have identified. You talked about your daughter with law. So last year we had a Legal Spark Academy where we had about 15 youth for the entire year, about 10 months. They met monthly and met with different lawyers or different people in the legal field to teach them about different aspects of that field. And then it culminated with them in the courtroom at Fulton County, learning from different judges, right? So giving them a deeper dive into these career industries. We started that by looking into areas where our youth are still historically underrepresented. Those industries where it says, there are going to be 750,000 jobs, for example, for cybersecurity that exists over the next 10 years. How do we prepare or at least introduce those industries to our youth in a way that helps them to think about how they can use their spark to get into those industries and really make a change and become leaders, not just knowing how to do a task or someone constantly telling you what is to be done, but no, putting you on the other end of that. And that's a part of that leadership program for us. So we are excited about partnering with organizations like Cyversity and other companies that can help invest in our youth and give them those skills that they need so that they are ready to meet those opportunities. And like you said, these are areas where you don't necessarily need a college degree. Or if you're pursuing your college degree, you can have certificates and have a little job to get your groceries and all your gas and everything,
So,
starting out. And then when you graduate, you are that much further along. I think it's the same thinking around internships. There's a whole education that needs to take place to support our youth on the importance of internships. It makes such a huge difference for our young people to understand that during your summers, what are you going to be doing to help elevate yourself so you are ready, or when you graduate, you already have an offer. We have a young lady, Alexis, who was in our program, and through a partnership with a company, she was given the opportunity to apply for an internship. She came to me and said, but they don't have any internships in Atlanta. I said, you can do an internship anywhere, right? She got her first internship in Detroit. She left with an offer and has been with that company since in the sales and marketing department. I think you actually met her. And so that is the education that our young people need. I always say it's not rocket science, but it's giving them the basics that they need to be able to excel and truly just change the trajectory of their lives. And so giving them the back end, when you talk about ethics with AI and all of these things, they need to be confident and be able to talk about and learn about these particular areas as well.
not only did I meet her, I was so impressed. I said, I'm going to put a panel together surrounding her with a few other individuals so that way people
Oh,
can
wow.
understand what was going on. Yeah, oh, it was impressive. But she was
Okay.
impressive. Oh, yeah. Um, that whole, that's a whole different conversation.
Yes.
you know, it's conversations like these that give me that energy boost that says, okay, do just one more coffee talk.
Yes,
because
yes.
because the amount of information and the way it's packaged is in bite-sized pieces for multiple individuals, right? It's consumable. And if a person listens, take notes, has action, they're going to be better for it. I'm gonna take us out on the last question, which is around Disruptivator. Because Careshia, I was gonna ask you about your vision, and that you already said it. I mean, anybody listening can hear, and they know where you're going, where Usher's new book is going. But if you want to wrap that into the comment on Disruptivator, which is going to be next week,
Yes.
then we'll all be better for it because it gives us a take on the present, which is going to be next week, and then what are you thinking about a year or so out?
Okay. Yep. So our Disruptivator Summit is coming up next week. So we're all working feverishly. All those passionate people I told you are working feverishly right now to tie up loose ends and bring 300 young people to Atlanta. We'll be on the campus of Georgia State University for a 2-day convening that supports our youth in thinking creatively, providing them with knowledge and skills that they need to create the life that they want. This year's theme is Be Your Own Superhero. It was generated by our Youth Advisory Council. They said that young people need to know that they can look inside of themselves and not just look outwardly in social media and celebrities to know that they have the power to do anything that they want to do. For those who may be thinking, what is this word Disruptivator? It's not in the dictionary yet, but it is a word that we coined 2016, which means someone who uses their spark or passion to bring about change in the world. And that's what this convening is about. It's about bringing young people together. We have panelists, they have networking opportunities. We start out with excursions where they all get on buses and go to different companies and industries in Atlanta and spend about 3 hours learning, doing a deep dive into those industries and learning about what a day in the life is and doing some hands-on projects there. They have a Disruptivator ball, which is a big party for them. You know, a conference, adults do it, right? So our young people, we need some time for them. They'll have performances. This year's theme, we've done sneaker ball, we've done creative sort of Met Gala. This year's theme, they will dress in colors that relate to their superpowers. So that can be, you know, music or communication, and you'll be able to tell folks superpowers based upon the colors that they're wearing. We focus on mental health. And then the last thing I'll say is we partnered with Walton Family Foundation to facilitate a survey over the last 6 months or so. We've been surveying about 750 youth to find out what do they think are the biggest issues facing their communities. And we will be speaking about the results of that research for the first time through a Youth Voices panel. So that will be amazing. And we're going to get our youth activated around. You've heard the issues, which I'll leak it here first as an exclusive. 2 of the top ones are gun violence and mental health. And that has been identified from students from Salt Lake City to Macon. And so they'll talk about that, and then they will get into groups and think about how can we start to create projects and bring about awareness to these issues and bring them to policymakers and business industry to bring about change. So I am super excited about it. When you talk about vision, we want to impact more youth. So we'll have 300 youth this year. Next year is our 25th anniversary, believe it or not. We want to double that with our Disruptivator Summit. And not just that, but our Disruptivator clubs. We have our program in Atlanta, New York, but we want clubs across the globe. This year, we have a goal to launch 20. We want to double that and continue to grow that exponentially because that means that there's more students that we can impact and help to grow into leaders.
All of that takes dollars. And first of all, kudos, I'm going to have to say kudos to Usher because 25 years,
Yeah.
right? I know I was talking to Jessica and she said that, you know, in part, he didn't want to, and keep me honest here, he didn't want to necessarily just say, oh, I'm doing this great and wonderful stuff with my Usher's new look because he didn't want that type of, he wasn't in it for, you know, the here and now where people are like, oh, you have a nonprofit, like, you know, you may see pop-ups. 25 years, you've been doing it for a while. So your heart's in it, your soul's in it. You're doing it for the community.
And he created an amazing vision around it, you know, and that has continued to, we have different iterations of it, but the core remains the same, helping kids get a new look on life. And that's exactly what we're doing.
What do you need from the corporate and other nonprofit communities?
So other nonprofit communities, it's about partnership. We don't do it all. We do the things that we do. So if there are other nonprofits that focus on different areas, we partner with them all the time. Would love to connect with other organizations. We send our youth to programming that fit within their spark. Having youth come to our programming, that's what partnerships looks like. Different convenings with other organizations. From the business community, we're always looking for people to share their journey through what we call motivational minutes with our students. We are a 501c3, as I said, so that investment into our youth, let me tell you, the return on that is huge. You already said at 100% high school graduation rate, 98% go to school. You invest $2,000 per student, sponsor a class, sponsor what we call a moguls in training retreat, where we can bring about 50 of our college students to a particular company for a day and a half of professional development. We build in some cultural immersion around that. It's even better if they can go to another city. Some of our students are still getting on a plane for the first time and they're 21 years old. So providing those experiences for our youth, because it creates that pipeline, that level of engagement with the young people that we serve puts business in a different light for them. And they start to want to say, hey, if you're investing in my community, I really do want to work for a place that does that. Can I learn more about opportunities? And it helping the bottom line for these business organizations as well. So we help each other in that way. That I would say those are the two things that are focused for us, is partnering with nonprofits to support more youth, and then the business community providing that financial as well as that human capital for us to do the work.
Careshia Moore, Miss Careshia Moore, Usher's new look. If you haven't heard about it, you need to. If you haven't talked with her, you need to get her on your podcast, get the message out, because she and her team are doing great work. If you are looking to figure out where your additional sponsorship dollars should go, 50,000 plus students, 100% graduation rate. That's an A plus. So Careshia, I appreciate you for joining us today. You've made my day. You've given me some energy back. You've given me that spark that says keep it moving, because there are a community of individuals out there that need this type of information. And so I appreciate you and I thank you.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. So I look forward to doing it again and having you to pour into our youth as well.
Oh, you're already signed up for
Oh,
fireside chatter.
yes,
We're
yes,
going to
yes.
figuring out how to lean in. So once again, I appreciate you. And to our NAMIC Atlanta audience, I hope you enjoyed it, because this is a good one.